Hey everyone, the Xperia 5 seems to be a more compact version of the Xperia 1, which is Sony's top flagship at the moment. Now, there doesn't seem to be any features missing, so what are the differences between the two phones, and is this the compact flagship that you should be getting, or should you get something else? I'm Angie for GSM Marina, and this is our review of the Xperia 5. The Xperia 5, like its bigger brother, is super skinny due to the unusually tall screen aspect ratio. It has a 6.1-inch screen diagonal, but it looks almost anorexic. There are definitely some benefits to this because it's much easier to hold than most phones, and one-handed use is a breeze. It would be even better if Sony included proper navigation gestures, but that might be more a flaw with stock Android than Sony. In any case, the software is clean and so is the design of this phone. It's elegant and minimalist, and it stands out in stark contrast to all the crazy gradients that have come out this year. The Xperia 5 has great build quality, and with the Gorilla Glass 6 and IP68 rated protection, it doesn't feel like you have to baby it. Also, thanks to its form factor, it's really easy to grip onto, and it doesn't feel like it'll pop out of your hands at any moment, which isn't something I can say for other glass sandwich phones out there. There are small bezels on the top and bottom, but once you start using the phone, you don't really notice them. What you do notice is the strange button placement on the side. There's the volume keys, a dedicated camera button, the power button, and a separate fingerprint reader. This setup was already far from ideal in the Xperia 1, but it's worse here as the keys are too low on this phone, so you have to shuffle your hand every time to turn the screen on and off. Speaking of which, the fingerprint reader isn't the fastest one we've ever used. You can also set up the face unlock option, but you'll still have to swipe up on the screen once it's been unlocked. The 21:9 screen aspect ratio that makes this phone so eye-catching is a controversial topic. You can't objectively say that it's a good or bad thing because it really depends on personal preference. For example, I'd rather go with a more standard ratio. The LG G8 has the same diagonal, but the width makes the screen feel bigger, so I find the Xperia 5 constantly pressed for space. Not all apps work properly on the unusual ratio either. You, however, might disagree. There's more vertical space for scrolling through Instagram and for reading, and there's no wasted space when you're watching 21:9 movies. Either way, at least there's no notch to bother you. If you're a fan of all this vertical space, you'll find this to be a really good OLED screen. It's a Full HD panel with a good pixel density of 450 ppi. There's no 4K like on the Xperia 1, but that was overkill even there. The display has a quite okay max brightness of 353 nits, and it can get up to 574 nits when it's really bright around. It's better in creator mode where auto brightness jumps to 631 nits and manual gets around 386. This creator mode is meant to deliver more accurate colors. There's a shift to blue in most display modes, but generally the display was very accurate in creator mode with a warm white balance. All of this is quite similar to what you'll find on the Xperia 1. The stereo speaker setup has very similar performance to its bigger brother too. The Xperia 5 has very good loudness. Bass was a little weak, but in general it's more than adequate. The dynamic vibration system, which unsurprisingly uses a vibration motor, is supposed to aid the perception of extra bass, but in all honesty, we didn't find it that satisfying. In terms of headphones, well, first of all, you're gonna have to use a dongle. Second, performance is good enough for most people, but it's not spectacular for a flagship, so you might actually want to use good Bluetooth headphones and take advantage of Sony's audio codecs. Surprisingly, despite having a smaller battery, the Xperia 5 had some really good battery life. It got 96 hours of endurance on our battery life test, which is both better than the Xperia 1 and the regular S10 and the S10e. With the bundled fast charger, you can get 53% in half an hour or 80% in an hour, but you should know that the charging rate slows down significantly after that. The Xperia 5 boasts a Snapdragon 855 and 6 gigs of RAM. Performance is flagship-worthy, but you're getting UFS 2.1 storage versus the newer UFS 3.0 that you'd find on a Note 10 or OnePlus 7 Pro. Like I said, Sony is all about minimalism, and this naturally extends to their software. It's a very clean version of Android Pie and only a few Xperia tweaks on top. You can use pill navigation or buttons, but there are no gestures. This is such a miss because the phone would feel so much faster if you don't have to scoot your hand down to hit the home button or the back button. The Xperia 5 also has SideSense. It's supposed to allow you faster access to shortcuts, but unfortunately it doesn't work reliably enough to be truly useful. The Xperia 5 has the same triple camera setup as the Xperia 1. There's a main 12-megapixel camera with an f1.6 aperture, an ultra-wide 12-megapixel snapper, and a 12-megapixel telephoto camera. Day photos are great with rich colors, good exposure, great contrast, and a ton of detail. There's some noise here and there, but that's because the algorithm works more to preserve detail than smudge noise. The dynamic range isn't the best, and the auto HDR helps at times, but it's not always triggered when you need it, and it works better at preserving highlight details than rescuing shadows. Shots using the telephoto were also excellent. The lens is a little darker with its f2.4 aperture, but dynamic range is still good, and we like the nice scene rendition in daytime shots. Like on the main snapper, there's plenty of detail and sharpness and great colors. Autofocus struggles a bit and is unreliable for shots of people, especially when eye autofocus is enabled. The ultra-wide camera isn't quite as detailed as the other two, but shots look good and offer superb contrast. Colors really pop, and the Xperia 1 settings allow for distortion correction if a fisheye look isn't to your taste. However, it lacks autofocus in burst mode, and even in the regular camera mode, it's a little more awkward to get to than the telephoto and main cam. As far as portraits are concerned, there's some oil painting-like artifacts, but otherwise there was great subject separation and natural-looking background blur. In contrast to its predecessors, the Xperia 1 is surprisingly good in low light. There isn't an actual night mode, but when it's dark, the phone creates a longer exposure type of shot that does its best to compensate for camera shake. The resulting low light photos are stunning. They have plenty of detail, low noise, and well-preserved colors. Not all highlights are blown, and exposure is mostly even. Although you can't use a telephoto camera at night, you can use the ultra-wide. Pictures are still usable and have decent detail and low noise levels. The Xperia 1 is equipped with an 8-megapixel front camera with an f2.0 aperture. When there's a lot of light, they're detailed with true-to-life colors. When the light is less bright, images are softer, although still plenty nice. Portrait selfies are rather middle of the road, and they don't have ideal background separation nor ideal defocusing. 4K footage from the main cam has excellent contrast, great dynamic range, and colors are true to life. There is a decent amount of detail, but we've seen other flagships do better. And Full HD videos are some of the best we've seen and have similar colors, contrast, and dynamic range. When you're using the ultra-wide camera, 4K videos are softer than those from the main cam, and they're a little oversaturated. As for the telephoto camera, 4K footage is also softer than the main camera, although with better colors than the ultra-wide. However, in Full HD, footage matched the quality that you'd get from the main cam. The Sony Xperia 5 is a really good compact flagship. It has excellent battery life, a clean UI, great performance, and one of the best camera setups from Sony in recent years relative to the market. The thing is, it lacks something that'll give it a huge advantage over similar but cheaper devices from competing brands. This is one of the best Xperia phones out there at the moment, but I'd still say that you should wait for the entire fall roster of flagship smartphones before you make the final call. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button down below, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and I'll see you guys next time.